Hello and welcome to the greatest MMA channel of all time. I am Andrew, your favorite sociologist, and today we are going to be giving you the best breakdown of the Ben Askren, Jake Paul face-off and press conference for their boxing match. Why is it the best? Because one of the most important things in reading nonverbal communication and body language is having a baseline, not just the baseline of the person, but the baseline of what is expected in that cultural and socio-circumstantial situation. So MMA face-offs, press conferences, I'm familiar with this stuff and look at it all the time. And I'm really familiar with Ben Askren. And this press conference was wild in the information that it was able to give us about these guys and how they feel approaching it. Now, what I'm going to do is tell you kind of what to expect in the coming sequence. And I'm going to show you the best angle because I've seen this thing at least a dozen times from 6 different angles. And there are some things that if you watch it, for instance, on the Jake Paul channel, that you're not going to see because they either cut to the people asking the questions or they have a certain boxed in view that they're showing you of the person, whereas other media that have the full angle of what's going on shows you a lot more of what's really going on. So let's take a look at how they start this thing off. Without further ado, let's get to the nitty gritty.
Can't wait to invite them out here on the stage. With no further ado, Jake and Ben, come on out. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. Thank you, guys.
Hi, Ben.
So right off the bat, they're walking in. Paul is the internet guy. He's the showman. He has his hand up to make himself the center of attention there. And Ben Askren walks in, and you'll notice, especially if you've seen the darn thing as many times as I have, that he sits perfectly still through almost the entire conference. And that's going to be important. Now, when you first sit down, you oftentimes want to make yourself comfortable and shift your stuff around. But Jake sits down and goes to make himself comfortable and has a particular gesture that he goes to where he keeps on pulling up and adjusting his pants at one particular knee with one particular hand. So let's pay attention to that and let's get into this.
Well, you guys have set the table for this pretty well with that video and with what you've been doing beforehand. And Jake, I'll start with you. You've kind of indicated that at the end of the day, your boxing skills you feel are better, and that ultimately that's the difference.
No, 100%. I mean, this guy's striking is that of a grandma. Quite literally, if I put a grandma in against Jorge Masvidal, she would have lasted longer than this guy. You know, he's a good athlete, they say, but April 17th, he's going to get exposed. You know, we saw Steve Cunningham earlier going up against Frank Mir, and it's a boxer versus an MMA guy. I love Frank Mir, but at the end of the day, Steve's gonna take care of business, and then later on in the night, same thing is going to happen. This is boxing versus MMA, and you're going to see the difference. You're going to see the difference of a wannabe fighter, you know, a guy who choked in the Olympics, a guy who choked in the UFC, and now a guy who's going to choke against Jake Paul. I'm going to end this guy's career as an embarrassment. Masvidal did it once, I'm about to do it again.
So we see his hand kind of stay still there a little bit when he gets comfortable, but then again, he mentions that he's going to choke that he choked in the Olympics and in the UFC, and it's kind of still, and he knows those things are just disingenuous because he's going to mention the Olympics as something that is a feat and an accomplishment of his later. But then when he says, and Jake Paul is going to, that's when he moves his hand around, does that soothing gesture, and brings it back in. And he also name drops Masvidal, which is going to be important later on during the phone call. And then Ben Askren gets a question where he goes right into Jake Paul's secondary status to his brother, regardless of what he was asked. Let's take a look at this.
You know, a guy who choked in the Olympics, a guy who choked in the UFC, and now a guy who's going to choke against Jake Paul. I'm going to end this guy's career as an embarrassment. Masvidal did it once, I'm about to do it again.
All right, so all of that having been said, Ben, you you indicate that the difference is not about the skill, it's about the toughness.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd heard of Jake Paul prior to accepting this fight, but I couldn't have told you a lot about him or his brother. I knew, he kind of came up in his brother's shadow. He was trying to fill his brother's footsteps. His brother is a lot more talented, has a larger following. Those type of things.
You literally.
So Ben gets asked about toughness, but immediately 1, 2, 3 goes after 3 things that are insulting to Jake as a little brother status toward Logan Paul. And he knows that's going to irritate him. And it does so much to the point where he not only has to interrupt, but he interrupts to say, that's not an original insult. You got it off of Instagram. But Ben doesn't care. He just goes on with it and asks, well, is it true, basically? And then when he mentions little brother again, we're going to see Jake make a gesture where he totally becomes downturned that he'll do soon again later with an even more powerful gesture added to it. So let's take a look.
You literally went on your Instagram and asked people for roast. You asked people for roast on your Instagram, and that was the top comment was say that his brother is better than him.
Is he?
That's like calling Kylie Jenner Kendall Jenner. Like,
I don't know anything about them.
Yeah,
anyway, so
doesn't matter. Still a compliment. Okay. I would love to be Logan. Logan's a great kid. Both stars, both taking over the world at a young age.
Okay, so when Logan's little brother called me out.
So we see him kind of hang his whole body when he says little brother. Now he's going to do that again, and he's going to rub his nose. Now it's not every time that people rub their nose that something necessarily is going on. It could just be that their nose itches or they've got something stuck on it. But he does it again while he goes into that same gesture of hunching over. And then you can see as soon as Ben mentions the easier guy, he turns and pays immediate attention to him there.
I thought about it.
You actually called me out. Let's get the facts straight. You called me out the week of the Nate Robinson fight. So continue.
Yeah. Okay. So when Logan's little brother called me out the week of the Nate Robinson fight, I said, sure, more than happy to, right? I like to fight. I've been fighting for a long time. Never boxing, but I've done wrestling, mixed martial arts, jiu-jitsu. And I thought, well, from his angle, what's he doing? And I asked some of my kids at my academy, what's this guy all about? And they said, he's a bully, he's a dick. And so I think from his angle, it's like, he's thinking, who's the easiest guy?
Okay, so we see that, and then Jake Paul gets into it again. And honestly, I don't know in this part whether or not he's true, because he's not the brightest light bulb in the lamp shop of internet celebrities or combat sports. So I don't know if he really just doesn't get the point that Ben Askren is making about, well, the even easier competition wouldn't sign, or if he's pretending not to get it and doing his typical bullying thing with anything he can think of and throw in there and interrupt with because he feels that uncomfortable with it.
That I can pick that'll give some validity to my name. It's like, I'm going to pick the guy who just had a surgery, who's retired.
If I wanted to pick the easiest guy, I would have picked Dylan Dennis.
Well, we know
Dylan was too
Dennis
scared to sign the contract.
I agree.
You actually had the balls to sign the contract. So if I wanted the easiest guy, I would have picked Dylan.
Jake, you did pick Dylan. We know that. I've already went over that. You picked Dylan. I know he wouldn't do it.
But you just said I picked you.
Because Dylan wouldn't say yes, dum-dum.
You choking on your words, Bubba?
You picked Dylan.
You choking on your words, Bubba?
You picked Dylan. Dylan wouldn't sign the contract. Therefore, you can't fight Dylan, so you have to pick the next person. Okay?
But
now,
you said I picked you
continue.
first. You said if I wanted the easiest person, it would have been Dylan. But you're saying I picked you as the easiest person.
Because Dylan wouldn't sign a contract. Well, I'm trying to wait for you to stop talking. Okay.
We see a lot of the double-digit IQ types that are known for bullying do this kind of thing. They just interject with noises, something to get the other person to stop talking. I haven't got anything wittier that I can actually say, so I need to make some kind of noise, something to stop you from saying that stuff, which bothers me that I've got nothing to say to. So that happens, and let's see what gesture winds up happening out of this exchange, because it's really interesting.
So anyways, this is typical bully behavior, but obviously sometimes
this is the
bully
fucking
picks
fight
the wrong
game.
person.
This is the fucking fight game. You pussy ass bitch. This is the fucking fight game. Yeah, I'll bully you around just like I'm gonna bully you in the ring. Shut the fuck up. You sound like a middle schooler. Oh, he's bullying me. Shut the fuck up.
Now, I was talking to your mentality You're not going to bully me. That's not going to happen.
Now, there's a really great angle that Sherdog got on this that would have been missed when Ben Askren says he's talking about his bullying mentality as to why he got him. And then he licks his lips and purses them and really makes an eyebrow down sort of miserable gesture. Let's take a look here.
You sound like a middle schooler. Oh, he's bullying me. Shut the fuck up.
I was talking to your mentality. You're not going to bully me. That's not going to happen.
So that was intense. And then there is quite the scene where Ben mentions, like, if I ran into you in an alley, because he is a complete MMA combat sports athlete, whereas Jake Paul only boxes. So Paul knows that in a true street fight, it wouldn't happen. So immediately he has to get up and flex in a way that he knows Ben Askren isn't going to come after him. Because like Ben says, he's got a whole bunch of people there that are with him and that would stop them from happening.
And like, Jake, if you and I ran into each other in the back alley in Las Vegas, and I wanted to
Do it right now then. Do it right now then. We're running into each other right now.
Someone can stop you. Got like 27 people.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. Okay.
Bitch.
Anyways, I would do a homicide on you if I wanted to.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you are. I guess that sets the table pretty well.
So Paul gets his first question, and it's a relatively softball question, and he starts talking immediately about how all these people wanted him. You can tell he's relatively comfortable answering that. And then Ben gets a question, and it's relatively easy for those both to answer. There's not a whole lot going in, so let's take a look through that and pick up at the next exciting part.
Jake thinks he's a high-level boxer. I think he's fairly delusional. I guess we'll find out.
You will find out very quickly and in a violent fashion. And you will embarrass the sport of MMA.
So Paul tries to chime in as soon as Ben is done answering his question, and he and then mispronounces a word. Now that's usually a telltale sign. Interrogators will often look to see if people mispronounce words that they commonly use, or if they're trying to use a bigger word than usual and fumble it, because it's often a good sign to let you know that what's coming out of your mouth and what's going on in your brain are not exactly on the same page. Let's see where he takes it.
You are representing the UFC. This is personal. The whole MMA community.
You're trying to make me represent the sport of
No,
MMA
you are
or
representing
UFC.
the sport. Dana White is betting money on you. He's trying to get trainers to actually help you train so that you can beat me. So you are representing the sport of MMA. You are an MMA fighter. Just like I'm representing the sport of boxing because I'm a boxer. Just like I'm representing celebrities and YouTubers because I'm a celebrity and a YouTuber. So I'm representing all of those things. So you are representing them, and you will see boxing conquer.
Here, this is really good. Jake Paul tries to make it about boxing versus MMA, and you can tell he's comfortable in what he's saying. He even brings up that MMA is represented because Dana White, the president of the UFC, bet on it, and his hand is resting in his lap comfortably. It's another nice section where you can tell what his baseline is of comfort when he's talking in this press conference, and that will change up very soon.
All right, let's go out for another question.
Hey, Jake, it's the Schmo. Good to see you. Quick question for you. If you get through Ben Askren, do you think that's the key to getting the attention of Dana White and maybe getting a Conor McGregor fight? Or who would be next on your list if you get through Ben Askren?
Schmo, my guy, good to see you. I don't have to do anything to get the attention of these guys. They have to get the attention of me at this point. They're talking about me more than I'm talking about them. He's one of the first fighters on the list. Yeah, he's the first MMA fighter that will be taken down. I think this will make the Jake Paul versus Conor McGregor fight that will happen one day more intriguing, of course. But there's Diaz after this. There's tons of people calling me out, celebrities still, athletes. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, this fight will give me a lot of credibility. Ben's 19-2, has less losses than McGregor. Two-time NCAA Division I champ, Olympic wrestler. So yeah, he's a real fighter.
So it's just really interesting that in that question, he mentioned some of the same accolades like training for the Olympics that he went ahead and tried to bust Askren's chops for before, knowing that just making it into the Olympics is a feat for an athlete in and of itself. So choking in the Olympics. So yeah, now he gives him props for it. And now it's time for Ben to take the question, and we'll see how it goes from here.
And that's why I wanted to do this fight, is to show the world, this real fighter is getting in with Jake Paul, and he's going to get KO'd in 2 rounds.
Now for you, Ben, on the other side of the coin, if you get through Jake Paul, what's next in your boxing career? Do you go for the big brother Logan Paul?
Yeah, I mean, 2021 seems like a tremendous year to beat up the whole Paul family.
All right,
Good seeing you, Schmo.
let's go to another question from the press.
Oh, so Ben made a joke about beating up the Paul family, and even the moderator wound up laughing out loud at that. So Jake Paul can't help but say something about it, and he does it in his typically very oafish way. And he's going to come back to this laughter stuff later in the press conference. So you can tell this really bothers him, which it bothers a lot of bully type people to be laughed at. And so he mentions the whole, oh, this was your first time getting a good one. Really, really wild stuff. And we'll see him come back to this.
That was your first good joke of the press conference. I know you're really excited about that one. Do you smoke cigarettes or are your teeth just yellow?
I'll write your material if you want me to.
English, please?
If you want me to write your jokes, I can do them for you.
If I want you to read my jokes. This guy's talking about my intelligence. Okay. God damn it. Embarrassing.
So this is the second time I see something like this. He goes to just a dumb insult about his teeth, but then there's another one of these disagreements where I honestly don't know if Jake Paul just isn't bright enough to realize what's going on, or if he does and is resorting to his middle school tactics of trying to diffuse it. But either way, it seriously seems to indicate a whole heck of a lot of discomfort with the situation. So the uncomfortable situation where he goes ahead and looks down again is then diffused with a relatively softball question again. And you can see Jake Paul with his hand resting on his thigh, not moving too much, again, comfortably answering most of this question here.
Mr. Zach here with the question for Jake Paul. Your last fight, you stole the show with a second-round knockout over Nate Robinson. What kind of improvements can fans expect to see in your game going into this fight?
Zach, I pick wins, young legend right there. Lots of improvements. I'm a completely different fighter. The fighter that I am now would knock out the fighter in the Nate Robinson fight. That is Jake Paul. So I'm completely different. And people will see I really haven't even gotten to show my boxing ability in my last two fights because they've both been like 4 minutes total or like 7 minutes total. So, I'm actually excited to see if Ben's going to give me a little bit of a test, a little bit of a challenge, because then people will see, oh, shit, this kid can do that. Oh, he has this in his arsenal. Oh, he's been working on that. I haven't even shown the world what I could do. That's why this is fun, because I have the ace up my sleeve. And when you have the ace up your sleeve in life.
And now we're going to see him get really upset. You can see him lick his lips, purse his lips, and then kind of look down and furrow his eyebrows a bit when Ben Askren interrupts him. And he interrupts him asking about whether or not the people that are with him in his entourage get paid or if they just get social media shout outs. That really seems to bother him a whole heck of a lot.
Hey, I was wondering, your cheerleaders that you brought to my room, like, do you pay them as coaches or groupies, or do you just give them like sloppy seconds and social media shout outs?
So right here, he goes right to diffusing it with some vulgar sexual stuffs that he's used to going to in a lot of his other videos for his YouTube channel because of the age of his audience. And then he goes back to that humor thing. Why don't you say it again so that everybody can, like that thing he used to hear in middle school? That was so funny. I forgot to laugh, so that he can feel good about himself. So you can tell here again, right, he makes it another subject, makes it the subject again. The laughter thing at him really makes him feel uncomfortable. And he doesn't like when Ben Askren does that.
I give them a ton of dry over the pants hand jobs. Maybe say your joke again and we can all remember to laugh. Say it one more time, we can just all laugh afterwards, just so you feel good about yourself. Say it one more time for us. No?
You have another question?
Yeah.
Look at the cock on this guy.
Jake, you spoke about the improvements you make every single fight. What can you attribute those improvements to? Is it your work ethic, your training team? What can you attribute that to?
Okay, so here he got asked a relatively softball question, and he's going to give a response that's pretty much in his baseline, very comfortable, giving it congruent and punctuating with his hand all the time. And you get to see a general, comfortable Jake Paul answer this one.
Man, all of the above. We're working so hard, and really just a true passion for the sport. I love what I'm doing, and I have such a chip on my shoulder. The whole world wants to see Jake Paul lose this fight, and I love that. I love that so much. And yes, we have the best team. BJ Flores, Jacob Chavez, D-Cut on the strength and conditioning, Carl, Jay Leon Love, John Marinick, Marcos, like all of these guys. I'm probably forgetting names. Even down to Shadow, Lucas Mack, all of these guys, Ebach. We have the best team. Blue, Gus, Content, on down. Best managers, best advisors, best lawyers, best trainers, best photographers. That's why I'm at where I'm at as a 24-year-old, is because I'm surrounded by greatness. And look, we all have a lot to prove to the world. And I'm 24 years old. This is the biggest stage of my life. The last event was the 8th biggest pay-per-view event in history. This one's going to be even bigger. Justin Bieber, Snoop Dogg, Doja Cat. Are you kidding me? And you think for one moment I'm going to sit there and fumble this? You think for one moment I'm not going to work my bloody balls off to beat this bum, this Walmart-looking head-ass Napoleon Dynamite motherfucker? No. You got to be kidding me. So, yeah, I'm excited for this, and I have a chip on my shoulder, and I'm going to prove to the world April 17th. TrillerFightClub.com. Buy it now. But I'm going to prove to the world that Jake Paul's the real deal. And that's why I called out Conor McGregor initially. This is the road to McGregor at the end of the day.
So yeah, most of that response was pretty reasonable, Jake Paul. But at the very end, you saw those legs shake, and we're going to see that again. He jiggles his legs when he mentions Conor McGregor at the end, and perhaps mentioning somebody that important that he's after makes him just a little bit nervous.
All right, we're gonna go out to virtual questions, and let's go to that right now.
From USA Today, we have Josh Peter.
There was that other leg jiggle when he mentioned Dana White, and he just took his phone out when they were going to the virtual questions. What could he ever be preparing himself for? Let's find out.
For Jake, you referred to Dana's $1 million bet. I just wonder how you felt about that. Where were you? You heard about it and got a chance to talk to him?
I think it's great. Dana White doesn't talk about really anything besides the UFC, so it just goes to show how big of an event this is. And again, he is one of the many bird brain people out there who don't understand that Jake Paul is a real fighter. And, he's going to lose $1 million. And I challenged him along with Snoop Dogg to step it up and make it $2 million. Put your money where your mouth is. $1 million isn't that much to Dana White. I am so confident in my abilities, and it's free promo. So thank you, Dana.
So he's representing the UFC because Dana White's betting $1 million on him, but $1 million isn't all that much to Dana White. So he needs to put more in order to make. But let me check my phone again, says Jake Paul.
What's next virtually?
Next up is fan-sided Jeremy Haregis.
Question for Jake. Jake, considering Ben's combat sports background, are you expecting a quantum leap in the level of competition that you've faced thus far?
No. I think he'll be easier to beat than Nate Robinson.
Well, that was unusual. Did you notice it? Whatever could be going on? Let's take a look at it from a different angle.
Are you expecting a quantum leap in the level of competition that you've faced thus far?
No. I think he'll be easier to beat than Nate Robinson.
Really interesting because he doesn't scratch. He just kind of gives his face a soothing touch before he answers no into the mic. Now, why would that be? Because he knows he's taking a step up in competition. The guy he's fighting now was the Bellator champ. The people he fought before have never fought before. So this is huge, and he knows it. And it was a self-soothing gesture to kind of let him get by. And he's going to use it again. Let's keep watching.
Was there a question for Ben there? Or did we lose that?
Yes, Ben, question for you. Based on what you've seen of Jake in the ring so far, have you seen an amount of talent that you consider him talented as a boxer?
So Ben gets asked a question. You can tell he's looking over at Jake while he's fumbling his phone before he then looks over at the person that's asking him the question. Now, Jake is going to touch his face and do that soothing gesture again. But while he's fumbling his phone, now, given the call that he's expecting, because it was a relatively easy question for him, it's the way he answers it, Is he that nervous about the questions being asked? Or maybe his nervousness has something to do with the fact that his expected phone call isn't going as smoothly or on time as he wanted it to just yet. Could that be? Let's take a look. Let's see what happens.
Are you now a boxing lifer? What's the end game? How long do you want to do this, and where do you want to get to in boxing?
Yeah, great question. Definitely a boxing lifer.
So that was another question where he was able to answer relatively easily and relatively comfortably. But the problem is Ben Askren cracks a joke at the end of it, right when he says he could see himself coaching his son.
You know, I could see myself coaching my son one day.
Someone's going to let you have kids?
So again, he goes back to the "you're not funny" when you try and make an insulting joke about me by saying, "Oh, you only got 2 laughs." And then he's fumbling that phone around, but the mighty phone call comes in and he says that it's his dad. Well, who could his dad be?
That was good. You got like two laughs. 2 laughs.
Thank you.
Next up is cage side
at your
press,
dad.
Gabriel Gonzalez.
Look at
I've got 2 questions. First one is for Jake. Jake, celebrity boxing isn't anything new, but it's certainly enjoying a moment. What do you think it is about yourself that's made it successful?
it's your dad calling in. Look.
So the person who's supposed to be Ben's dad is actually the opponent he had in the UFC, Jorge Masvidal, who knocked him out in 6 seconds and set a record. And he is using this to try to get under his skin. But who's the one who's really changed because of this? When you even hear Jake Paul, he's going to get him, changing his voice, almost code switching because he's so taken by the fact that Masvidal actually called into this press conference and set this stunt up with him. But is it really working against Ben?
That dude's still alive? He's still alive, bro. I'm about to take him out. Hey, he's still alive. Don't worry, I'm gonna finish him off. Yeah, don't worry.
Tell him I like them flip-flops, man.
He said he likes your flip-flops. That's my guy, Masvidal. Maker of Ben Askren. Jake Paul will be the finisher of Ben Askren. Does that bother you, by the way, that you got knocked out in 5 seconds?
Nah, it happens.
Doesn't bother you?
Well, it actually looks like Jake is more bothered by the fact that Ben isn't bothered than Ben is bothered by the phone call. Let's see if Ben gets bothered by the actual video.
Not really.
It doesn't really happen, by the way. That's only happened once.
You got a record.
You literally have the record. Yeah.
I literally have the record.
You
yeah.
hold the record.
The record.
Yeah. 5 seconds.
Yes.
It doesn't like haunt you at all. That like you're
Does not
probably the
bother
most
me, Jake.
embarrassing fighter in UFC history.
Jake, I know you have low self-esteem, but you don't need to project it onto me.
So this clip doesn't bother you?
I've only seen it like a million times. Doesn't bother me.
Doesn't bother you?
No.
Are you sure?
Sure.
We do the same thing.
Now, it seems a plug for Modelo was the only thing that Jake Paul succeeded in doing because Ben's still sitting the same way and seems totally unflapped through this entire conference. Now, he gets asked a question about celebrity boxing and essentially says that he's the only one doing it. And Ben then brings up his brother and asks him a question about his brother, which he answers, but then he asks him another question, which he doesn't really want to answer.
Who's better, you or him at boxing?
Me, hands down. That's why I'm 3-0, 3 KOs. He's 0-1-1.
Yeah. He ever whoop your ass when you were the little brother? That was a question, Jake. You're supposed to respond.
I just don't care about your questions.
So how does he react? He doesn't have anything witty to say, but he wants to continue to deflect Ben Askren saying anything funny that's insulting. So he goes to the ha 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 little canned laugh that he's got to try to diffuse the situation for himself.
Okay. So I'll take that as he rubbed your face in the carpet on a weekly basis.
Yeah, sure, Ben. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha.
On that note, we'll go for another virtual question.
So there's actually a couple more questions asked, and they go the way that you would sort of expect them to. When Ben is saying something that would make Jake feel uncomfortable, he makes the fake snoring noises over it. And the last question Ben is asked is about an intimidation factor of something that happened between him and Jake the day before. And he brings up the thing again that he could do a homicide on him because he knows it's true and he knows that that bothers Jake and nothing would happen. So Jake's response is him being disingenuous and projecting again. The same way that he said he was funny and helped sell the thing while he was making fun of his jokes the whole time. He just mentioned his wife and his Instagram, but then he mentions, oh, well, nobody cares about him. And there's this huge team that he's got, and that's who did the cheer, and that he's jealous of this team. And I think perhaps Jake is a bit concerned that in his celebrity, does he actually have any real friends, or is he the one that's doing this? So why is he saying that? Is he really the one projecting? And then at the end, he actually does a full-on cheer for Ben Askren at the end of it. I think he probably in his mind was thinking to do some version of a cheer that would mock him, but just couldn't think of it fast enough, because I can't imagine that he started it with the intent to do a cheer for Ben. But let's watch that at the end here, and then we'll wrap it on up and head on into the face-off.
Say, like a 1 to 1.1, somewhere in there. Again, if Jake and I met in an alley, I would just do a homicide if I wanted to. No big deal. I was most impressed by the fact that Jake, as a 24-year-old, is able to convince a whole team of grown men to do a cheer with him. That was tremendous.
It's called a team, a family, something that you don't have. Seems like you don't have really friends, and we're all in this together, and this means a lot to us. This means a lot to everyone. This is a part of history. That everyone on my team is a part of history, and we're a brotherhood. And quite literally, a bunch of 20-year-olds taking over the world. Sounds stupid.
Yeah, I hope you do some more cheers on the way there.
Well, we know it's going to be serious on April 17th.
Go Bayside!
We appreciate both of you being here.
2, 4, 6, 8. Who do we appreciate? Ben. God damn.
And that's essentially how it wraps up. They're told to exit the stage because it's over. Ben walks off, and Jake lifts his microphone into the air and screams about how he's 22 days away from ending Ben's career. And then he walks off, and they have other news. But then we catch up to them here at the face-offs. Okay, so here you've got Frank Mir finished his face-off. He's talking to his opponent up front. And what happens is Ben Askren seems to get sent to the wrong side because they're supposed to have the face-off through this glass partition. Now, some people were thinking that because of Jake Paul's general persona, that he's going to try to start something in the face-off itself because that's the closest opportunity they've got, and that's why he was avoiding the glass. But let's take a look at what happened before Ben got to the right side of his glass that you won't see if you watch it from the Jake Paul channel, because this angle was totally cut out.
Hey, that's not what's going on, right? Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Jake, you're on this side. My fault. I'm sorry, guys.
So when Ben Askren was walking past Jake Paul, he raised his hand and whoop, as if he was going to poke him in the eye or something like that to goof around with him. And Paul reacted really quickly and antsily to that. And then Ben gets behind the glass, and he's going to be calling for him as Paul waits for him outside of it to prove a point and flex. He wants to do it without that glass. And here they go, right as Paul looked like he was going to walk into Askren's side of the booth. Askren comes outside, fearless, smirk on his face, ready to face off with Jake Paul, and they get toe to toe. Now, as soon as they step up to each other, Ben Askren is the typical business face-off, standing there still, and then Paul starts throwing at him. And what he says is, you're going to get bleeping destroyed. You're going to get your bleeping butt kicked, and mentions how big his head and his neck seemingly are. So they're going to be big targets. And then he turns to face the audience, and he's saying that he's the champ when he hasn't been champ of anything.
Like a man, come on, bro. Let's go! Fuck this, fuck up, you know that, right? Big ass man. Fuck up.
Showtime, baby. 22 days away.
Right when somebody in the audience yells out to him, and Ben then goes, "Is that your cheerleaders?" It's really embarrassing, and turns, and what he does is brilliant because he puts his hand up as he's turning away. So when he does the big brother thing and palms Jake Paul on the face, his back is going to be completely toward him, and we're going to see how Paul reacts to exactly that. Do you think he's going to be flappable, or are we going to see his limbic system kicked into action?
The champ is here, baby. The champ is here, baby. Yeah, bitch. Bitch. Don't fucking touch me, bitch. Don't fucking touch me, bitch.
Wow, a very, very bad sign. So we definitely saw Jake Paul, surprise, surprise, lose his cool when Ben shoved his hand into his face like that. And what did he do? Well, his system reacted. What can you expect out of him? Probably the most primal reaction you'll get if he's pumped to react if Ben's going to do something. And he gives him that half-hearted slap on the side, kind of hitting his side and his belly, so that then he says those belly comments thereafter and steps back, shoves him then, and steps back and starts threatening. The shove, you can tell, was an afterthought because that smack was that first reaction. And then he kind of does that limp little where Ben has a smile on his face the entire time, and there's no sudden reactions, as if all of that was totally expected to him. And then he steps back and he starts jawing again about come and do something.
Get the fuck back here, come on.
That's enough. Come on.
Big ass belly.
That's enough.
Big ass belly.
22 days, baby. Let's go. Come on. We're good. We got it. All 2 days. No problem.
Got hella flubber.
Let's go, baby. Let's go. Run.
Well, he knows Ben is not going to do anything. And in an interview afterward, Ben even said so much, like, it's a press conference. I have to kind of keep it classy. And that's what would be expected of a guy that's been in as many fights in combat sports as Ben has. That's not going to send him off. But what it did was it made Jake Paul look very much like the weaker person, susceptible to all of those stimuli that make him react with uncomfortability in that press conference. So yeah, this thing did not look good for Jake Paul, but honestly, did any of us expect it to when you've got a guy that's had 3 fights? Whether or not they could be called fights is a whole other story, because they weren't against any real professionals, going up against somebody that is a seasoned professional. So if there were any doubts as far as how Ben Askren is going to do in this, because he wasn't a pure striker versus Jake Paul, who's been training in boxing, I think this says a whole heck of a lot about what could be the case depending on the nervousness and how they're facing it. Because Ben, like he said, he's having fun in this press conference. And in a video afterward, one that I'm going to analyze, so check it out after you check this one out, Jake Paul says that this is the biggest moment in his life. So that's a lot of pressure. A retired guy doing it for fun versus being the most meaningful thing of his life, because he's hoping to turn this into a career and doesn't want all of the stuff that he said to his fans to be just an act like everything else he's been saying has been. I think he really wants to grow up and make something of himself. And that's what this path is for him, which is why he's so serious. And when he talks about those questions that he feels comfortable answering that are meaningful to him, he can do it calmly. And he looks like he really believes what he's saying. And when somebody disturbs that his dream, that what he's wanting to realize isn't going to be the case, he really, really, or especially if he's laughed at, he really gets frazzled. And Ben totally frazzled the heck out of him at this press conference without looking like he was blown an inch off of median throughout the entire thing. So that's how I would take it. Please leave your comments in the comments section and let me know what you think to generate some discussion. And please click like and subscribe if you thought this was interesting. I do body language breakdowns of almost every significant MMA encounter and combat sports encounter that you will run across. And I hope to see you here in a future video. Thank you so much. Cheers. Take care. Hope to see you soon.